Todd McShay is with us, well-known NFL draft analyst, the Todd McShay Show. Todd, thank you for joining us. We appreciate it. And
good to be here, man. How's it going?
Yeah, it's going great. And we watched your clip earlier when you were talking about how Shedeur Sanders would be a great fit with Kevin Stefanski. You made the point of the pocket quarterbacks that have had success with Kevin Stefanski, and you're right. And everything you said in that video made a lot of sense. But my question is, independently of Kevin Stefanski and the Browns, how good a player do you believe Shedeur Sanders is going to be in the NFL?
I think he's going to be a solid to good starter. I don't think he has the traits to be, in the elite class when we start talking about the Patrick Mahomes and the Josh Allens and some of the names that we all know, Joe Burrow, Lamar Jackson. So I think what you're looking at is a quarterback who, when protected, when playing on schedule, he's a brilliant processor as a passer, and he's fun to watch in terms of just the way he layers the football, his anticipation as a passer. That's why I think, and I know you're asking me independent, but to be in a system where you have a head coach or an offensive coordinator that can bring out the best in a quarterback, and that's not everywhere, I promise you.
Yeah.
But to be in that kind of system, it will work. And we talked so much leading up to the draft about the traits and who the player is and big arm, mobile, accurate as a passer, all those things. But history tells us so much of it comes down to, especially the quarterback position, what situation does he get drafted into? Is it a situation like Cleveland where they have some protection, they have some weapons, they've got a damn good defense, and they have, most importantly, a coach that can bring out the best and maximize what he does best in his traits and his skill set. So last year, he's probably the 5th, 6th quarterback taken, right? And this year, he's going to be the 2nd quarterback by all accounts. But I can tell you this, there are some people in the league who think Jackson Dart, that there's not a big gap between those two. Some people in the league think there's not a huge gap between Cam Ward and Shedeur. More people in the league think that there's a sizable gap in terms of the traits and what there is to work with in terms of development. And Tyler Shough, I think, is the most underrated quarterback in the entire class. And I think he's got a chance when we look back 3-4 years from now, coming out of Louisville after 3 different stops in 7 years and all that he's had to endure and the maturing that he's done. It won't shock me if we say he's, maybe the 2nd best quarterback from this class. So it'll be interesting. We can get into it, but it's going to be really tough to pass on the best player in this draft in Abdul Carter, right? And to think about the potential of him versus opposite Myles Garrett and what that could do defensively for you. And then you start thinking about, okay, if we take Abdul Carter at 2 and then we take a move up for a Jackson Dart, or we take Tyler Shough in round 2, that's a better combination than taking Shedeur at 2 and whatever pass rusher or other player we're going to get in round 2. So I think that's why we continue to see Cleveland trying to look in the veteran market, see what's available. Can they make this work? But you got to remember, they are in absolute purgatory because of the Deshaun Watson contract. So this may truly be the best out for Stefanski and for Andrew Berry.
There's so much to follow up on what you just said there, but I think I'll go with this, because I was just asking these guys, similar to what you just said. I said to them, would you rather have Shedeur Sanders, and we went with a Mecca Ibuka, but it could be certainly a pass rusher or whoever you take at 33, or would you rather, I said Travis Hunter, because that's who would be my choice, but whatever, you take it to, and then take one of these, either Jackson Dart, and we were talking specifically about Shough. In your mind, what is the better combination for the Browns in the long term?
Probably the route of taking Abdul Carter or Travis Hunter at 2 and then taking Tyler Shough. But you got to remember, Jackson Dart's not going to be there. By all accounts, everyone I'm talking to in the league, I think 9's a little rich for New Orleans, but I do think somewhere in that 15 to 25 range, whether it's Pittsburgh taking him at 21 or a team trading back into the first round to get him. So now we're talking about Tyler Shough or Will Howard if you want later on day 2. But you have to believe in the quarterback, right? And I do believe in Tyler Shough. I don't know if Cleveland does.
Right.
And so if Cleveland's like, there's only 3 quarterbacks in this draft, and there are some people in the league who believe that. And some people think there's only 2. So if Cleveland's of that mindset, given their salary cap situation, and it ain't going to change next year.
That's right.
And if they're picking this high again next year, do Andrew Berry and Kevin Stefanski still have their job? So there's an element of that too. Like we've got to win enough games this year so that we're back picking and in control of this organization next year. So that's why I think there's this combination of we got to draft our rookie, whether it's in the first or second round, but who's going to win us the most games this year while we have a talented roster? And if we just get average to like slightly above average quarterback play, we're probably going to be in the playoff mix. So that's the tightrope I think that they're kind of walking right now.
Todd, let me ask you, why is it that you feel Abdul Carter is the best player in this draft? Because a lot of people think it could be Travis Hunter. Why do you feel Abdul Carter is the best?
It's a great question.
Thank you.
Travis Hunter is he is a generational talent. We hear that thrown around because there truly has never been anyone like him. And people will go back to Deion Sanders, and people will go back to Charles Woodson and Champ Bailey and some other guys who came out who played both sides of the ball and were very successful doing it and had impacts, I should say. But at the end of the day, and I got to look up these numbers again, but I looked it up, and I think it was around 60 catches Deion had in his entire career, or offensive touches, something along that line. Obviously, in the return game, he was massive. Champ Bailey and Charles Woodson had like 5 or 6 catches combined. So we're not talking – we've never seen this before. And so that then begs the question, with load management and modern technology and science and nutrition and health, the care of bodies, can there be a load management situation put in place, program put in place, where we can actually capitalize on the fact that this guy truly is special? And I think that's the question every organization drafting at the top is asking themselves. How would we manage it so that we can get – because if you just get him as a receiver, you're getting Garrett Wilson, and that's a damn good player, okay? But if you can get impact plays on both sides of the ball, that's something we haven't really seen. And so if you believe in doing that and you believe you have the right infrastructure in place, then, yeah, I'm taking Travis Hunter, because he's got a chance to do something different than anyone else we've ever seen. But if not, and you're worried, okay, he's had the shoulder injury, he's kind of got a slighter frame, will he hold up if he's playing full-time corner and playing some installs each week on offense? I think that's kind of the juggling act, whereas I know what Abdul is. It's the second most important thing in football. Outside of the quarterback, getting to the quarterback, affecting the quarterback is the second most important thing in football, and he does it better than anyone else in this class. And he does it at like elite level. We've talked about with guys coming out, like, whether it's Khalil Mack or the Boses or, Myles Garrett. He's up there in that level. Now, does he have the size of some of those guys? No, there's a little concern. Does he have the foot injury that you're kind of working through and you're hoping he works out his pro day? Yep, got to work through that. Did he have the shoulder in the postseason? Yep, got to work through that. But as a player, I know exactly what I'm getting. And that is a vicious, skilled, fast, explosive, bendy pass rusher who's going to absolutely succeed in the NFL.
Todd, appreciate you coming on. Jay Crawford's usually on the show. He's not on today, but he wanted me to tell you to say hello.
Yeah, I miss Jay, man.
Jay
how's he doing? You guys handling him all right?
He's wrong every
He's
day.
out of control.
He's lost in the soup.
He wanted to pay Jameis Winston $25 million a year after 2 games.
That sounds right. That sounds right. At least he hasn't changed, man. I like consistency.
Not at all.
No, he's also convinced Will Howard should be the first
He thinks
quarterback
Will Howard's
taken,
the best quarterback in the draft, too.
Go Bucks.
I'll save that
He's
question.
loyal. He's loyal, if nothing else. And
Definitely loyal.
I love Jay. I miss working with him.
And if you guys don't check out the McShay Show and follow the McShay Report, Google the McShay Report. Todd talks about how he hates selling it, so Todd will sell it for you real quick, but just Google the McShay Report. It is well worth your time, one of the best draft assets you can have out there. But Todd, this morning on 92.3, the radio station, Brian Hoyer was on with Ken and Lima, and he said he would take Joe Milton over any of the quarterbacks in this draft. And I am not an expert, so I wanted to ask you this. Joe Milton, obviously 6th-round pick out of Tennessee last year, played great in that Week 18 game against Buffalo. But is he on the same level of quarterbacks in terms of future prospects as Cam Ward, Shedeur, and the other guys we've mentioned, or is Brian Hoyer out on a limb on this one?
I love Brian. I had a higher grade on Brian. I'll give you a Brian Hoyer story. I sat in the in Radio City Music Hall, I don't know, 15, 17 years ago, whatever it was. And I had a 3rd round grade on Brian. And I remember there were some lunatics still when day 3 is an interesting place to be especially back in the old days of the Radio City Music Hall. It was my first year on television doing the draft. And I've got all these guys like clumped in a corner by my sets, just chanting Brian Hoyer, because we're now in like round 5. He hasn't gone. So I've always liked Brian. I hear what he's saying. Like what you saw last week or last season at the end of the year, week 18, it's awfully intriguing, man. There's no competing with that arm. He's got a lot to work with. I just know the evaluation coming out. There was a lot of concern about is he seeing the entire picture? When NFL teams had a full season and then a next season to kind of pick up on his clues and his tendencies, does he come back down to earth a little bit? He's got a lot of developing still to do. He had a lot of developing to do, and I think that year of sitting back and learning certainly helped him. You could see that in week 18. I'm not saying that I think it would be a good investment. I would throw a 3rd, 4th round pick at New England and bring him in and develop him if I truly believe that I have the right quarterback coach and or offensive coordinator. But to say I'd take him over the guys in this class, I would respectfully disagree.
Todd, when you look at the Browns, they have a ton of draft picks. I believe it's 12 now after they traded the 1 through 10 Pickett. But in days 1 and 2, they have 4 picks. 2, 33, yep, something in the 60s, and then 94, which is the pick they got from Amari Cooper. I know you don't love mock drafts this far out, but in theory, what does a perfect A-plus grade first 2 days of the draft look like for the Browns? I know spots can change, but what do you think a perfect haul for the Cleveland would be on those first 2 days?
Well, shameless plug. I do have Mock 2.0 coming out tomorrow, so if you do want to subscribe to the McShay Report, now is a pretty good time to do it.
Timing.
I set you up.
Yeah.
You did. Thank you. Again, like that combination thing is so tantalizing, right? Is it Abdul Carter, the best player in the draft, arguably, or Travis Hunter, the top 2 players in the draft, with a Tyler Shough? The problem with that is, first of all, if you believe in Shedeur and you really think that – I said this before. Andrew Berry's best asset in this entire salary cap hell that he's in is his head coach, because there's not many guys in the league that are capable of working with quarterbacks that don't have those elite set of skills, if you will. They can bring the most out of them and win a lot of games and have a proven track record doing so. So I've got to lean on Kevin. And if Kevin says, hey, I can do what I did with, Kirk Cousins, and I could do what I did, winning 11 games and 10 games and all he did with the Vikings and moving forward. If he believes in that, then it's absolutely Shedeur Sanders. If he's kind of on the fence, like, yeah, I hope, but I'm not sure, then it's, hey, let's take the best player. Let's be smart. And then hopefully Tyler Shough's there. And if our intel says that he might not be, maybe we trade up a few spots. But that's how I would approach this thing. Regardless, I'd like to bring in another pass rusher, but it's more the luxury and the opportunity of Abdul sitting there at number 2, the best player in this draft. I think when you look at it, I certainly think linebacker is a position that they could address at some point. I mean, there's Carson Schwessinger from UCLA is probably going to be later 2nd round. There's Demetrius Knight from South Carolina, who's a really good player, and there's a whole bunch of them in the 4th round range. So I think that's one spot they could go. I look at the nice part is they've done some decent stuff in free agency. They've got a good roster. I would look at another weapon as well, at wide receiver. So those are the areas I would go. You've got 4 picks, and to be quite honest with you, I think the draft is a lot stronger in rounds 2, 3, and 4 than it is even, in terms of value in the first round. So the more picks I can get in rounds 3, 4, and 5, I think the better chance you have of walking away from this draft with a handful of players rather than just packaging picks, moving up and relying on one of these guys at the top to be such a difference maker that it doesn't matter that you didn't have a 2nd or a 4th round pick.
Todd, I want to get more into Tyler Shough, but before we do that, 9 years ago, a little-known defensive back out of Ohio State by the name of Tyvis Powell went undrafted, but played a number of years both in Seattle and San Francisco. Do you remember grading Tyvis, and would you have drafted him? I think he should have been drafted.
Be honest, Todd.
I had a late 5th on you.
See, everybody did.
I did.
Everybody did.
But I was surprised you didn't get drafted. And I was wrong too. Right?
Yeah.
I was wrong too. So
it worked out. It worked out for the best.
I had a second on you for what it's worth.
Huh?
I had a second.
Richard Sherman's his
appreciate
best
that.
friend, although he can't get Richard Sherman on the show. But
Oh my goodness.
I know how that goes.
Yeah. Anyway, the question about Tyler Shough, because I'm not a phony. I don't know enough about him. So my question is, are the criticisms about him just the injury and the age, or is there more to it? Because to me, if it's just the injury and the age, but if he stays healthy, this guy's going to be really good, then I'm all in. But is there more to it than that?
Let me give you a little bit on Shough, because
Okay.
I think he's the most, and I know his name's popping up now, but I don't hear anyone like really diving into who he is.
Yeah.
This is a man who he was Justin Herbert's backup
Yeah.
his freshman year in
Insane.
Oregon, okay?
Yeah.
He won the starting job, had a pretty good first year, hit some bumps, new regime comes in, gets injured. Winds up going to Texas Tech, wins the starting job, goes out there ready to go, injured. A third time, injured. Finally, after 6 years, for his 7th year, I think it was, gets to Louisville, gets with 2 coaches in the Brahms that actually know how to develop quarterbacks. 1 year with them. So all year long, I'm watching obviously the guys at Cam Ward, Shedeur Sanders, right? Yeah. I'm watching Garrett Nussmeier from LSU, who returned wisely, but I think he's going to be a high draft pick next year. Carson Beck, Jalen Milroe, Quinn Ewers, right? All these guys. So I've gotten like Will Howard. I've gotten like 10 deep on the quarterbacks, and then I see him on the list for the Senior Bowl. And I watched him, mostly watching like defensive players against him, and I knew he was in the class, so I would get to him eventually, and I'm like, oh, shit, Jim Nagy thought enough of him to bring him in the Senior Bowl, so I started watching a little tape before. Then I get to the Senior Bowl, and I'm like, this guy's he's maybe outperforming Jackson Dart in some of these things. Not all, but some of these, some of the areas. He's got a stronger arm than Shedeur Sanders. He's in the same class as Jackson Dart, maybe stronger. In the same neighborhood as Cam Ward. He's more mobile, I think, than Cam Ward. He's definitely more mobile than Shedeur Sanders. Yeah. Okay, he's bigger, right? So let's dig into the history here. So then I start to talk to scouts, and they're like, like really mature, impressed with him. He's grown up a lot and all that. Then I come back and I watch the tape, and I really dig in like I did with all those other 10 or so quarterbacks. And I'm like, he's as talented as anyone in this class. Maybe a notch below Cam Ward. But why aren't we talking about him more? And then it's like, well, the injuries, and he's going to be 25 years old, and all those things. Then I actually sat down with him for an hour. I talked to him before, and then I interviewed him and talked to him a little bit after. Playing the quarterback position is so much mental and maturity and knowing who you are as a human being and trusting in your leadership and trusting in your experiences. And I'm telling you, it was one of the most impressive hours I've spent with a quarterback, and I've spent somewhere between 20 to an hour to 2 hours with every top quarterback you can think of, dating back to like my first years, like Tom Brady, okay? Mm-hmm. This guy's different. I think all of the things that were negative in college, he's learned from. He's had hardship. He was one of the guys, right? He was in the same recruiting class as Trevor Lawrence. He was like 5-star, and everyone wanted him. And he went to Oregon. He was going to be the next, right? He was all those things. He was going to be the next Justin Herbert. And every time he was about to explode on the scene, it was an injury. Well, let's look at the injuries. There are 3 bone breaks. Yep. These are not like ACL tears or Achilles ruptures or backs. They're bone breaks. And yes, you worry, is this going to happen again? And his style of play is overly aggressive. He's learned to protect himself, but still can do a better job, and he can be a little bit careless at times. But I'm telling you, the development he had this past year, he's got the tools, he's got the traits. And honestly, the most impressive and important thing to me is he has been through all these wars. He knows who he is. And it's like he's playing on house money. And I love a quarterback who's got that kind of mentality because he's got a chip, but he's mature enough to know how to manage all of that's going on inside and between his ears. I think he's going to be an absolute steal in this class. I really do.
I'm all in.
I'm about to say
that.
you definitely sold
Todd
him.
McShay,
Definitely sold him. After watching the tape, I was like, man, listen, I can take him in the second or third.
Sean King is a regular contributor on our show, the former quarterback, and he didn't really know much about him either. And then he watched the tape, and he was just like you. He didn't get a chance to interview him, but he was really blown away by his game. So.
Yeah, he's going to be an interesting one to track over the next few years.
Todd, let's get you out on this one. Obviously, the run with Nick Chubb has seemed to come to an end. I know you've done running backs. Who should the Browns look to get in those mid-rounds?
Yeah, I can't believe I didn't mention that before when asked, so I'm glad you circled back on that. I think this is the year to do it, man. I don't know if anyone watched the Combine. All these positions, the top guys weren't working out. Nash and Ginty didn't work out. But it was like the old days with like the defensive linemen where they all just, lunge pail, walk in the gym. Yeah, let's go. Let's everyone works out. The competition between all of these guys, the record-setting average 40 time of 4.48, just reflective of the tape. It's like an experience watching because you get done with Ginty and you're like, my goodness, like he's just different. Then you get to Omari and Hampton and you're like, wait a second. Is he as good as the other guy? And then you get done with him and you get put on the Ohio State tape. And I've been watching Travion for a while. And I've been watching Judkins for a while. And their blocking wasn't like as good as – I promise you this. Their blocking was good, but like the level of competition they were playing in the postseason, they weren't blocked up as much as Caleb Johnson from Iowa, okay? And so they were earning things. And to see them blocking, I know you guys have seen it. Like, you want to get inspired when you're watching 20 running backs that could go in the first 4 rounds, and they're like, it's starting to like all run together. You're looking for separators. To see Judkins out there blocking for Travion Henderson, and Henderson out there blocking for Will Howard with like it's the last play of their entire careers, and to see that explosiveness that both of them have, especially Judkins, man. Travion's the explosive one, right? Mm-hmm. Well, Judkins, I don't know that there's a faster back from the snap of the ball through the hole than Judkins. And he's not just this power back. So those 4 guys are on like a different level. And then you get to Caleb Johnson from Iowa and you're like, he's pretty damn good too. Mm-hmm. And then Scadaboo from Arizona State, I kind of was like, yeah, I see it. He's a grinder, he's a power back, but is that going to hold up? Is he light enough? And then I watched his tape after watching those other 5, and I'm like, shoot, the gap isn't as far off from him and Caleb Johnson and Johnson from those Ohio State guys. So now you get 6 backs. All they're going to go in the first 2 rounds probably that project to be starting every down backs in the league. And then you get past that into the rounds 3 and 4, and you've got like little guys like R.J. Harvey from UCF and Rashard Smith from SMU and the Tennessee kid. Dylan Sampson is super quick, undersized, but quick and tough and pass pro and all that. So this class is loaded at running back. And I'm not saying to wait. If the opportunity's there, I'm taking Henderson late in the first. I promise you. I'm taking Judkins in the top 40 if it fits for what we're looking to do. But I also know if I can't, that I'm getting a really good player in the 3rd, in the 4th, and maybe some guys in the 5th.
Awesome, Todd. We appreciate you coming on. Make sure you check out the McShay Report. 2 episodes per week, and I'll do the promo again for Todd. $4 for this year's draft, $36 for this year's and next year's draft. Well worth the money. Todd, appreciate you coming on.
Awesome insight. Thank you,
I appreciate you guys.
Great.